The Integrity Commissioner must have sufficient tenure and independence to examine issues surrounding conflict of interest, both informally and formally. An Integrity Commissioner might hold formal hearings as necessary, make findings, and impose sanctions. There is still a role for the MCIA, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Having said that, where a member has acted in contravention of the conflict of interest provisions of the Act, currently removal from office is the only sanction. I believe that lesser sanctions should be made available. For example, suspension of the member, a form of probation, or a public reprimand. I also believe that the scope of the MCIA should be changed so that the rules regulating conduct apply to any meeting attended by a member of council in his or her official capacity. I pause here to say that the mayor held the view that provided she declared a conflict of interest in her legislative capacity and refrained from voting at council or taking part in discussion, she was on safe ground. Certainly, she was correct in her view that the MCIA did not apply to her actions in advocating privately for her son's company. This may very well point to an inadequacy in the Act. Nevertheless, I have found that her actions were nevertheless improper under the application of common law principles. These principles should be codified. The Act should be amended to make it clear that mayors and members of council are subject to the conflict of interest provisions both in the legislative and executive functions of their office. I believe that the Mississauga Code should be amended as well. Its language should be strengthened to make clear that members must avoid the improper use of the influence of their office and shall avoid conflicts of interest, both apparent and real. The Code should also make it clear that members of council shall not extend preferential treatment to any individual or organization in the discharge of their official duties. Preferential treatment would be found to exist if a reasonably well-informed person could conclude that the preferential treatment was advancing a private interest. I have served on a municipal council. I know that members of council must, of course, be able to use their influence on behalf of their constituents, but I believe there must be greater transparency surrounding the nature of these dealings. I also have found that Mississauga should consider whether to create a searchable database containing a list of all declared and known conflicts of interest. All of these and other measures would have prevented the circumstances which required this inquiry to have been called. For example, the mayor could simply have sought advice from the Integrity Commissioner prior to embarking upon her course of dealing with the co-owners of the land. One of the co-owners might have raised the matter with the Integrity Commissioner. There must be a practical and low-cost way of clearing the air in these circumstances. Let me briefly deal with the issue of the mayor's gala. Sometime after the conclusion of the formal hearings in this inquiry, I learned that there had been a misunderstanding shared among a number of council concerning the nature of benevolent activities undertaken by the mayor through her gala and other events. I felt these matters required my consideration. The terms of reference specifically required me to examine relationships between the mayor and other individuals and companies identified in the terms of reference, including WCD. The principal of WCD, Mr. DeChico, had, together with other participants in the inquiry, purchased a number of expensive items at the mayor's gala. The Gala Fund has supported a variety of community activities through the years, and I had thought from the evidence at the inquiry that the Mayor's Gala was a charitable event, as the term is commonly understood, and that those who attended might have received a charitable receipt for portions of their tickets. Media reports later suggested this was not the case. My council examined a considerable volume of documentation and conducted interviews on issues surrounding the Mayor's benevolent activities. Ultimately, questions in this area were resolved by the inclusion of an agreed statement of fact, which is appended to my report. I note that the Mayor agreed in 2007 to transfer the gala funds of some $2.3 million to the Mississauga Community Foundation to be administered at arm's length. A similar arrangement is in place to administer the funds raised through the Mayor's charity golf tournament. I believe these measures to be appropriate, and I have chosen not to make recommendations surrounding the Mayor's benevolent activities. I believe that broader consideration of elected officials lending their support and office to the benevolent activities might be considered in the future by City Council, with the assistance of an Integrity Commissioner. For me to have undertaken a proper review of these matters and to make recommendations would have required reopening the hearings and calling further evidence. In my view, it was not in the public interest to proceed in this way at this time. We live in an age when the media and ordinary citizens demand increasing transparency and accountability. I believe that the approach taken in the report to improve Mississauga's ethical infrastructure will serve to promote public trust in municipal institutions. Let me close by saying this. I had the benefit of having the Mayor appear before me for 3 days of testimony. I continued to marvel at her stamina. She was candid in her testimony about the limits which she thought should be placed on public officials dealing with private business. I have seen firsthand the Mayor's careful stewardship of the long-term interests of Mississauga, and I have every confidence in her leadership abilities. As Council debates whether to adopt all or none of my proposals for change, I am hopeful that my recommendations will enjoy her personal support. Finally, let me publicly acknowledge my sincere thanks to all council who appeared before the inquiry. This whole exercise could very easily have gotten off the rails. Because of the civility exercised by all council, it did not, and for that I am most grateful. Let me also publicly thank all staff who made the ship run smoothly and for making my job so much easier. Thank you. Commission Council will now respond to any questions. Unfortunately, I have to leave because I have to fly to Ottawa for court appearances.